There is a warehouse about 40 miles outside New York City, with no sign on the door and no address you'll ever find by searching for it. Inside, kept at museum-grade temperature and humidity, sits a fleet of automobiles that a growing number of serious historians now call the single greatest privately owned car collection on the planet. Not a royal family's fleet, not a racing team's inventory, not a museum's storage basement. A fashion designer's garage. Today, we're going inside 7 of those bays, one at a time. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the world's most respected concours events go looking for him instead of the other way around. Say the name Ralph Lauren to most people, and they picture blazers, the little embroidered horseman, maybe a cologne ad from 30 years ago. Fashion. That's the story everybody already knows. And it happens to be true. But underneath it, almost completely out of public view, there's a second story, and it has nothing to do with clothing. While Lauren was assembling one of the largest fashion empires on Earth, he was also quietly assembling something else entirely, a collection of automobiles so historically important that the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston once cleared out an entire gallery just to display 16 of them as sculpture. We went through the ownership records, the auction results, and the concours history behind 7 of the most significant cars in that collection, and lined them up to answer one specific question. What is this garage actually worth? All in. The number waiting at the end of this video is bigger than most people guess, even people who think they already know classic cars. Before we open the first bay, go ahead and hit subscribe, because this channel spends its time inside the garages that most car content never gets anywhere close to. And there's a new one of these waiting for you every single week. Car number 1, 1929. Bentley 4.5-liter blower. Start with the oldest machine in the collection, a 1929 Bentley 4.5-liter, the car everyone in this hobby simply calls the blower. Bentley built this generation of cars during the roughest financial stretch in the company's history, right before it very nearly collapsed, and drivers like Sir Tim Birkin took them to Le Mans anyway, superchargers screaming, because that's what you did with a Bentley in 1929. You raced it until something broke, then you fixed it and raced it again. Ian Fleming grew up watching cars exactly like this one tear across the English countryside. And when he eventually invented a fictional spy with impossibly good taste, he put that spy behind the wheel of a blower Bentley in the earliest novels, years before the film franchise existed and decades before anyone had heard of an Aston Martin. In 2020, Bentley itself built 12 brand-new continuation blowers, faithful down to the rivets, and serious collectors understood the distinction immediately. Those are tributes. Lauren's is the source material. There's a particular kind of quiet authority that comes with owning the original while the manufacturer is out there selling copies of it. Car number 2, 1955. Mercedes-Benz 300 SL. Gullwing. Move forward 26 years to 1955, and the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing, a car almost everyone recognizes on sight, even if they couldn't name it. Those doors don't swing upward because a designer thought it looked dramatic. Mercedes built the 300 SL around a lightweight tubular steel frame, and that frame ran high along both sides of the car, too high for a conventional door to clear. So the engineers hinged the doors from the roof instead, purely as a structural workaround, and accidentally created the most recognizable silhouette in automotive history. Underneath the theater, the 300 SL was also the first production car in the world fitted with direct fuel injection, technology borrowed straight from Mercedes's wartime aircraft engines, and it could outrun nearly anything else legally sold in 1955. This particular car isn't one Lauren bought once his fortune could chase headline auction lots. It's one of the pieces he owned early, back when he was still building the collection off pure instinct, and that tells you something about which cars he genuinely loves, as opposed to which cars simply arrived later as trophies. Car number 3, 1938, Alfa Romeo 8C 2900B Mille Miglia Spider. 3 years before that Mercedes rolled off the line, Italy was building something on an entirely different philosophy. The 1938 Alfa Romeo 8C 2900 Mille Miglia Spider. Alfa developed the 8C as its flagship racing weapon of the late 1930s, with the entire program overseen by Alfa's racing division under a driver-turned-manager named Enzo Ferrari, years before he ever put his own name on a car. The body on Lauren's example came from Carrozzeria Touring of Milan, one of the great Italian coach builders, hand-formed in aluminum over a lightweight frame, in an open two-seat configuration built to survive 1,000 miles of Italian public road at full racing speed during the Mille Miglia itself. No computer touched a single line of that bodywork. Human hands shaped every curve by eye and by feel, which is exactly why comparable examples now change hands for well north of $20 million whenever one becomes available, and why designers still point to this exact car when they're asked what automotive perfection actually looks like. Car number 4. 1998 McLaren F1LM. Every car so far in this collection was built before almost anyone alive today held a driver's license. Then you turn a corner in Lauren's garage and find a 1998 McLaren F1LM, and the entire story jumps forward 60 years in a single step. In 1995, McLaren entered 5 F1 GTR race cars at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and in one of the most stunning results in the history of endurance racing, they finished first, third, fourth, 5th, and 13th, an entire field of purpose-built prototypes beaten by road-derived cars nobody expected to survive the race, let alone dominate it. Afterward, McLaren built 5 road-legal cars to commemorate that win, stripped closer to race specification and running the same engine that powered the winning GTR. Only 5 were ever made. Lauren owns one of them, which means the same climate-controlled room holding a 1929 Bentley and a hand-formed Italian racer from 1938 also holds one of the rarest hypercars ever built. That range is the entire point of this collection. It was never about one era. It's about greatness wherever he finds it. Car number 5, 1930, Mercedes-Benz SSK Count Trossi. But if you want to see what greatness looked like before anyone had invented the word hypercar, go back to the car that Lauren's own restoration team reportedly calls the most intimidating machine in the building, the 1930 Mercedes-Benz SSK known as Count Trossi, named for the Italian aristocrat and racing driver who commissioned its dramatically elongated custom body. To this day, nobody has definitively established which coach builder actually built that body, and in a hobby obsessed with paperwork and provenance, that single gap in the record only deepens the car's mystique. Mercedes built fewer than 40 SSKs in total, each one wrapped around a supercharged 7.1-liter inline-six engineered under Ferdinand Porsche before Porsche ever left to start the company that carries his own name. Engage that supercharger, and the sound isn't subtle. It's closer to a mechanical scream than an engine note, loud enough that it reportedly cleared pedestrians off the roadside before the car itself ever came into view. This is the car the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston put on the cover of its own exhibition book, and if you've ever stood beside one in person, you understand immediately why the curators chose it to represent the entire show. Car number 6, 1962, Ferrari 250 GTO. If the SSK is the sound of pre-war danger, the next car in the fleet is simply the sound of money. Ferrari built exactly 36 examples of the 250 GTO between 1962 and 1964, and in period, the number of people who wanted one badly exceeded 36. That scarcity wasn't an accident. Enzo Ferrari personally approved every buyer, and having the cash wasn't sufficient on its own. You needed his blessing, which meant the car arrived with a level of exclusivity that money by itself has never been able to purchase.
Lauren's example won its very first outing before racing through most of that decade with a genuine competition record behind it, and he acquired the car in the 1980s for roughly what a nice house cost at the time. Today, that same automobile is conservatively valued north of $70 million, making it one of the greatest appreciating assets in the history of car collecting, let alone the history of this specific garage. Nothing else Lauren owns has made him more money purely by sitting still and being exactly what it already was.
Car number 7, 1938, Bugatti Type 57 SC Atlantic. Which brings us, finally, to the one automobile in this entire collection that even devoted Ferrari collectors will quietly admit outranks their own crown jewel. The 1938 Bugatti Type 57 SC Atlantic. Bugatti built exactly 4 of these. One now belongs to a museum in California. One, known as La Voiture Noire, vanished sometime during the chaos of the Second World War and has never been recovered, making it arguably the single most valuable missing object in the entire history of the automobile. A third was badly damaged decades ago and eventually brought back from the brink. And the fourth, first delivered to a British owner in 1938, found its way into Ralph Lauren's hands in 1988. Look closely at the body, and you'll notice a raised seam running down the spine and over each fender. That seam isn't decoration. Bugatti's magnesium alloy panels simply couldn't be welded with the technology available at the time, so the factory riveted them together instead. And an engineering workaround born out of pure necessity became the single most photographed detail on what may be the most valuable car on Earth. Lauren's restoration alone reportedly consumed close to 9,600 hours of skilled labor, and the finished car has since won Best of Show at both Pebble Beach and Villa d'Este, the 2 most prestigious concours events that exist. Depending on who you ask, this one automobile is worth somewhere between $40 and $100 million. And that range exists only because no sane owner has ever agreed to sell one long enough for the world to find out for certain. Add up just the 7 cars we walked through today, and you're already well past $250 million before we've touched a single other vehicle sitting in that same climate-controlled building. Here's what most coverage of this collection leaves out. Those 7 cars are the headline acts, not the entire show. Ralph Lauren's garage holds somewhere north of 70 automobiles in total, with some counts pushing closer to 100, and the supporting cast alone includes rare Porsches, additional vintage Ferraris, and British classics that would be the single best car in almost anyone else's garage on Earth. When historians and professional appraisers try to price the entire fleet, the boldest legitimate estimates now push toward $950 million, depending on how aggressively you value the rarest pieces if they ever reached open auction. Whichever figure you land on, one fact never moves. This is, by a considerable margin, the most valuable privately held car collection ever assembled by a single human being. None of this happened by accident. And none of it happened because a wealthy man simply decided cars were a good place to park spare money. Ralph Lauren grew up in the Bronx, in a family that didn't own a car at all, sketching pictures of automobiles he had no real way of ever touching. Every acquisition since has been that same instinct, playing out on a much bigger stage. The belief that a beautifully engineered machine deserves the same respect as a painting, and that preserving one properly is an act of cultural stewardship, not just an expensive hobby. That's the thread running from a 1929 Bentley all the way to a 1998 McLaren, and it's the reason serious automotive historians talk about this garage in the same breath as the world's great art museums. If you want to keep going inside the garages most car channels never get anywhere close to, hit subscribe now, because there's another one of these waiting next week, and it may be even harder to believe than this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next bay.